I will. I'll give you a quick sense of kind of where I came from and how I got here really quick. So I went to Arapahoe High School in Centennial, and then I went to Arizona State University, and that's where I studied journalism, and I worked for the student paper there. And then, guys, it's really cool getting to cover like the teams that I watched growing up, but I had to take a pretty long way to get here, and I had to go move kind of across the country to multiple jobs before I was finally able to get here. So just real quick on exactly what I do. So every day I wake up, like right now it's Broncos season. So today I'm going out to Broncos practice later. I'll go in the locker room, talk to the players. I'll talk to head coach Nathaniel Hackett, ask them about their game on Sunday, ask them about their game coming up this Sunday against the 49ers. And then I'll have to write a bunch of stories. So today I'll have to write like 2 or 3 stories about what I talked to the guys in the locker room about. I'll have to do a podcast this week. So there's lots of like every day, it's basically just writing about sports, talking about sports and writing about sports. So I do that for the Broncos when it's Broncos season. Then when it's Rockies season, I go out to Rockies games and cover them. I cover high school, state championships. So like really any sport that you can name, I've covered. I mostly cover baseball and football, but I like covering track and volleyball and soccer and just all these other sports too. It's really fun. So back to kind of how I got here, I had to move all across the country. And, sometimes like you think that like I thought I could work for the Denver Post right out of college, but I had to go to Alamogordo, New Mexico, a tiny town in New Mexico, right out of college. And I was a sports editor there covering high school sports. And one thing I'll say, guys, is it's really cool covering the Broncos and the Rockies and like the pro sports, but a lot of the best stories are are like high school sports or youth sports, because those athletes obviously they're in it because they love it, and there's not money involved and all these other things. So I had to go to Alamogordo, New Mexico, and I was a sports editor there. And Alamogordo, guys, tiny little town in New Mexico, like really nothing to do there, but just work and try and figure out the next step. So from there, I moved to South Bend, Indiana. So moved way across the country. And then from there, I moved back to Denver. So I had to kind of pinball around before I was able to, like find the job that I really, really wanted, which is here at the Denver Post, covering the teams that I grew up watching and cheering for. Okay, so that's kind of how I got here. And I'll say, we can, talk through this here at the end, but I'll say like all along the way, doing whatever I could and beyond has helped me to get here. Like, there's lots of people, I guess, in life who are willing to, just kind of put in the bare effort and just skate by. But even, from college onward, I just kind of decided like, hey, I'm going to really apply myself and try to see what I can do as a sports writer. I always dreamed of being a sports writer as a kid. So that's what I wanted to be when I grew up. In terms of what, like school, what you should be doing now, like what you should be doing now is like, having fun with your friends in school, but also like figuring out kind of what you want to do, like if you're in middle school, early high school, like start to think about like, what kind of things do I want to do with my life? That doesn't mean you have to have it figured out, right now. I knew I wanted to do something in writing. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do really until like, for sure, until I got to college. So right now, like just, be exploring things, but like every class you go to, everything you do in school, see it as an opportunity. Yeah, I know it's hard work. It's not always fun doing the homework and the tests, but it will lead you some places if you put in that work and if you kind of have a vision for what you want to do. So guys, I went to college, and like I said, I wanted to do writing. Does someone have a question? Are you good? Okay. I went to college and I wanted to do writing, but I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. So I ended up enrolling in the journalism school at Arizona State, but I wasn't really sure like what journalism was. And journalism, if for anyone who's kind of unclear on that, it's reporting, it's newspapers, magazines, talking to people, interviewing people, and writing about people and events. Okay, so I enrolled at the journalism school, but really what I thought I was getting into was like writing like poetry and short stories and like made up stuff, right? So one of the first days, the advisor is like trying to help me enroll in my classes. And I was like, well, I want to take poetry. I want to write like short stories. She was like, well, that's not really like that's not really the major that you signed up for. And so I kind of like very quickly got like a crash course of like, oh, I should probably have thought this through a little more in terms of what I'm doing. But long story short, I really ended up liking journalism. It was fun I wrote for the student paper there. So at Arizona State, I covered all tennis and cross country and football and baseball and all the sports there to kind of like get me ready for when I graduated from college. Because that's one of the most important things too, guys, is like doing the extra stuff on the side. Like doing well in school is important, but whatever you want to do, whether it's sports writing, whether it's going into medicine, whatever, like you have to do the stuff outside of school, like the jobs and the internships that apply to what you want to do, because that's really going to help you kind of down the road. So I think that was big, especially as I got out of college, helping me get a job and then kind of move along in the industry to get to the Denver Post. Okay, so I'll tell you some more about kind of what I do day to day, because it can be pretty fun, but it also can be like kind of stressful, because it is fun going out and talking to Russell Wilson and, you know, talking to Jerry Jeudy and seeing what's up with the Broncos. But then it's also kind of stressful because it's a lot of writing, it's a lot of reporting, it's a lot of details. When you're a sports writer or when you're a reporter in general, like everything you do is kind of scrutinized. So if you make a mistake, you're gonna hear about it. Like, you know, imagine like making a mistake on your test and the teacher pins it to the whiteboard for the whole school to see. Like that's kind of like what it's like. So it can be really fun having your work up for everyone to see, but it also, like, there can be, you know, challenges. Like if you make a mistake, it can be tough. So you got to be careful. You got to be careful while also writing very fast. So back to what I do, you know, I go out today, I'll talk to Russell Wilson, I'll talk to some of the Broncos guys. Then I have to write a story. Like today, I got to write a story about how the Broncos can't score when they get down towards the end zone. So the story can't be like, oh, the Broncos aren't very good when they get towards the end zone. They fumbled a couple times. Like it's got to be, I got to talk to 3 or 4 different players. I got to talk to the head coach. I got to write up all the quotes, and then I got to write a story. And it's not like, you know, in school, like you get like a week to do your book report. Like in professional writing jobs, it's like, okay, you got to write your story right now. You have 1 hour. So I basically have like 1 or 2 hours to write my story. And I got to write another story about who's injured and what else is going on with the team, because like we can't like leave any detail out there, basically. Another thing I'll point out in my everyday job, there's like 20 other people who are like me out at Broncos every day, talking to players and getting their stories. So it's very competitive. You know, just like if you're playing a game, just like if you're in school and you're trying to get the best grades you can, like when I go out to talk to the Broncos and Rockies, I know I got to write the best story I can and as quick as I can, because there's like 10 other people who are doing the same thing and who are pretty good at it too. So it's a lot of fun, but also like a lot of pressure too sometimes. The fun part, the most fun part about this job is getting to go to games. You know, like if you have a job where you get to go to sports games for a living, it's pretty fun. So, you know, going to Broncos games, going to Rockies games, but make no mistake, like it's not like going to the games with your parents and like eating Dippin' Dots in the stands. Like you got to get there early. For baseball, you have to get there several hours early to talk to the players, to write stories before the game. And then you have to write a story about the game. You have to go after the game, you get to go into the locker room. And if the team won, it's super fun because everyone's like jumping around, especially in football. Everyone's jumping around and music's blasting. But if they lost, it's not so fun. And you got to go in and ask them like, hey, like, what happened out there today? You know? So it's kind of a mix of both. And you got to learn how to deal with athletes who are like really happy to talk to you and athletes who don't want to talk to you at all because they just lost or they just made a bad play to help their team lose the game, you know? So it's like, it's learning to balance all of those things. And then also, like I was saying, you know, social media and all of these, because as I'm sure you guys are aware, you know, like Twitter is pretty big and sports journalism kind of lives on Twitter. So you have to constantly be like watching what other people are saying and making sure you're not missing anything. And it's kind of a 24/7 job, but it can be really fun, like when you get into it. Okay, I've kind of blabbed for enough. Do we have any like just general questions? Any feedback? Anything I said that sounded crazy or that you want to follow up on? Anything, guys?
Hey there.
Hello.
I've got some elementary students here in 4th grade in Fort Morgan. You guys all wave to Kyle.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello, guys.
Thanks so much. I've got Kamaya here and she has a question for you.
Awesome.
Have you ever played for the different different Broncos?
So no, I haven't played for the Broncos. And actually that's the kind of a question like I get a lot. Like, did you play sports? Or so I did play sports. I played football and baseball and basketball. I still play baseball like in just a men's league, you know, but no, I didn't play for the Broncos. Most of the reporters didn't play professional sports, you know, like so you don't have to play for the Broncos to like write about the Broncos or cover the Broncos. So just remember that, like even if you're not even good at sports at all, if you're interested in sports and if you're good at writing, you can be really good at being a sports writer because you don't have to be like an awesome athlete to do it. But very good question. Who else we got?
Do you guys mind if Fort Morgan kids keep asking questions? Is that okay?
Go for it.
Okay, we don't want to talk too much. How about McKinley?
What is the hardest part about your job?
I would say the hardest part is just like balancing it with my family because, you know, I have 3 kids and I have like 2 little kids too. So it's a lot of time away from my family to like write about sports, you know, like it's cool being at the stadium and it's cool traveling with the team when they go out of town and like you follow them, you know, to Seattle or wherever to cover the game, but it's also a lot of time away from my family. So just like any like job that you choose, like you have to also think about, you know, what kind of life you want to lead too, because journalism, you know, being a doctor is a great example too. Like you want to be a doctor, all the school, all the time that goes into that, all the time that you spend at work that's less time that you spend, you know, doing your hobbies and your stuff you love. So I think that's like the toughest part is balancing my job and then also the life I want to lead too, because I want to be a great sports writer, but I also think it's important to do other stuff, and that will help you be good at your job too, instead of having only your job, you know, because that's kind of a tough life to lead. And I've seen a lot of sports writers do that, who just have their job, and that's tough to only have that in your life. What else you got, Fort Morgan? Hey, Fort Morgan. So I did one of my favorite stories I did was on Trey McBride. If you don't know him, you should, especially you guys who play football around there. He just got drafted this past year. He went to Colorado State, and he's a guy, great story, who he played at Fort Morgan High School, not that big of a high school comparatively to like Cherry Creek or some of the schools around Denver, but he just kept doing his thing, went to Colorado State, had an awesome career, and now he's in the NFL. Having a pretty sweet rookie season. So keep your eye on that guy, Trey McBride from your neck of the woods.
We have a lot of Trey McBride fans here.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, he's got such a good attitude too. We love him. Can Everson ask you a question?
Of course.
All right. What has been your favorite players for either Colorado or like any team? Like who was your favorite to interview or like talk and write about?
Oh, that's a very good question. So I'll start by saying a lot of pro athletes don't really like the media. Like they don't really like having to be interviewed all the time. And it's just kind of like annoying to them, at that point. And a lot of them don't like, because we're asking them critical questions. We're being like, hey, Russell Wilson, like, why did you miss that pass? So it can be a tough relationship sometimes between the reporters and like the athletes we cover, because they know that we have to be critical of them sometimes when we write about them. But to your question, Bud, I would say two athletes, Charlie Blackmon for the Rockies and Bradley Chubb for the Broncos. So Charlie Blackmon is a baseball nut. Like that guy's obsessed with baseball. So he doesn't exactly love the media, but when you get to talking with him, like he talks baseball like nobody's business. Like it's really awesome talking with the guy who's just like so obsessed about it, And then Bradley Chubb on the Broncos, he's a really good guy. Like he's had some ups and downs with the Broncos as a rookie. He had like the best season ever as a rookie rusher for the Broncos, and then he's been hurt and he's had some other things. So like he's taken a lot of criticism from the media and from fans, but every time I go up to him, he gives me the time, he gives me honest answers. And that's what you want from like the athletes you cover, is like just honest answers, and then being like them, because that's why I was saying high school sports are really cool to cover, because high school athletes aren't worried about saying the wrong thing or like, making sure they don't give you too much. Like they're being them. So that's the coolest athletes to cover. And I think that's why Charlie Blackmon and Bradley Chubb are really cool. And is that a Nuggets jersey you got on? I haven't covered the Nuggets a lot, but Nikola Jokic is really cool to cover. And so is Jamal Murray. Is that a Jamal Murray jersey? Can't tell.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, those two guys are really, really good with the media too.
That's awesome. Can we get Kamaya again? Go ahead.
What's all the teams that you played for?
What's that?
What is all the teams that you played for?
All the teams that I played for. So I played football and baseball at Arapahoe High School and basketball. And I played baseball at Arizona State. And then the team I currently play for, who Amanda's husband has played for too, so we're pretty good buddies. It's called the Colorado Cutthroats. So it's a baseball team that it's just like old men playing baseball and caring way too much about it. But like, you really do have to love sports to want to do this, right? Like if you want to cover sports all the time, you do have to love sports. So you might not have to be good at sports or like the best, but you do have to love it, because you're going to be writing about it and talking about it just all the time.
We've got some more questions.
Keep them coming.
All right, let's see here. We've got Oric right here in the front.
Have you ever accidentally not turned in like some work, or like not finished it in time?
Oh, that's a hard question. Wow, you're asking the hard hitting questions. Yeah, so there's been some times like I haven't okay, so one time I was supposed to cover the Rockies game and I forgot. And my editors called me after the game was over, and I hadn't like sent them a story or anything, and they're like, hey, what's going on? And I was like with my family, I couldn't write the story. So they were pretty upset about that, and that's something too, guys. Organization, like no matter what you do, you got to be organized. You got to make sure you know what you're doing every single day, because you drop the ball like that more than a couple times, and that's how like you don't get a job or you get fired from your job, And I'd say the worst time, guys, oh my gosh, I was covering an Avalanche game. I was at the Avalanche game. So I went to the Avalanche game. I had to write a game story. And so there's a lot of pressure, like when we got up towards deadline. Deadline is when the newspaper has to be printed. So if I don't send my story, say by 10 o'clock at night, it's not getting in the paper. So I have to hit that deadline. So the game was really close, and the Avalanche were winning, and at the end they lost and they blew the game. Well, I had to rewrite my story really quickly. like in like 3 minutes, like literally 3 minutes. And long story short, there were a bunch of errors in it, and it got into the paper, and I got probably like 30 emails from readers being like, wow, are you like in elementary school? Like, I mean, like it was bad. Like I got bashed, I got talked to by my editors. Like it was, so like, that's what I'm saying, no job you're going to be perfect in, but you got to realize like, you got to take the good with the bad and just always try and do your best and bounce back when things like that happen. Like it wasn't good to see the paper the next day and my story had like 6 errors in it. So that was not the best day in my career, but that was a good question. Hard hitting question.
Future sports writer. Can we do
Yeah.
another one? Tell us to stop whenever.
No, as long as we got time, Amanda.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, same with you. Awesome. I've got Billy here.
So is sports writing your number one job, or would you prefer to have a different job?
Well, sports writing is my number one job. Yeah, it's my only job. But sometimes I've thought about like, what if I had a more regular job that had more regular hours, like 9 to 5, or like where you didn't have to work so many weekends and weeknights. Because that's the thing about sports writing is you're covering the games when everyone else is watching them. Like all your friends are watching and going to the games and enjoying them, and you're having to work. So that's something you got to think about. But yeah, sports writing is my number one job. I also do other like writing and stuff on the side. Like I like to write poetry, but to pay the bills, yeah, I'm a sports writer. That's my number one job. Who else? Blue shirt.
What do we got? Has James asked one yet? How about James? And then Musa.
What has been your favorite sport that you wrote about?
I would say baseball, just because I love baseball so much. So covering baseball and getting to cover like the Rockies and professional baseball players who, like, guys, I always wanted to be a professional baseball player when I was a kid. I was never even close to good enough. So to like be able to see the really good baseball players up close and how they prepare for the game and how they deal with striking out and hitting home runs and all that in between, like that's my favorite part of covering sports.
How about Musa in the back with the purple shirt?
Have you ever went to any type of team in soccer game?
Yeah, so I've covered quite a bit of high school soccer, because the high school, especially girls soccer, is really good around here, and boys is getting better too. I've covered the Rapids a little bit, and then I've covered the U.S. women's national team, because they've come here quite a few times to play matches, and a few of the women on the team, Lindsay Horan, Mal Pugh, Sophia Smith, those women are from Colorado. So there's like, soccer is a big sport in Colorado. So yeah, I've covered it quite a bit, but we probably, that's the thing about sports writing too, is we're not covering soccer as much as we probably should, to be honest, guys. Like we have a baseball writer, we have a football writer, we have a basketball writer, we have a hockey writer, but we don't really have a soccer writer, and a lot of newspapers don't. So that's kind of like, soccer should get more love, and I think it will as it continues to grow, like in America. But I do like writing about soccer. It's fun, especially the national team.
I've got more for you. How about McKinley in the blue shirt?
What is the funnest part about your job? Watching the games.
I would say the most fun part about my job is that it's watching sports and writing. and that's two things that I love, like sports and writing, even if it is, kind of stressful sometimes and like long hours, you get to go and watch sports and write about it. And that's something like no matter how tough sometimes it gets, I always keep that in mind that it's supposed to be fun, and like that's whatever you guys choose to do, like keep that in mind too. I wouldn't say go for something because of the money, always go for something that like really speaks to who you are and like that you can really see yourself having fun doing for like your life, because you don't want to have to go to a job for your whole life that you don't want to do. Trust me, that's not fun.
Fort Morgan, can we ask some questions? Hi there. We are with RE3J and we are Hudson Elementary and we have some questions for you.
Awesome.
Are you on the sidelines like for games, or do you interview them after the game or before?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Oh, I'm asking.
Do you interview them on the sidelines when it's halftime, or do you just interview them before or after the game?
Oh, good question. Yeah, so you see like the reporters interviewing them at halftime and stuff. Those reporters are like with like the TV crews. So you won't see me like on TV interviewing athletes or anything. I usually interview them. If it's baseball, I'll interview them before and after the game. If it's football, after the game. So in baseball, what they do is they open the clubhouse, which is the locker room for baseball, like a few hours before the game. So you can go in, you can talk to the players about whatever you want. Go up to the locker and have one-on-one conversations with them. And then after the game, you can do the same thing. In football, you get to talk to the players after the game in the locker room. So that's usually what I spend most of my time doing, is in the locker room, talking with guys. And that takes, you got to go up to them and like take the initiative, kind of just like with anything in life. Like you're not going to get any interviews if you just kind of stand there. Like you have to go up and be like, hey, Charlie Blackman, do you have a minute to talk about, the game tonight? And sometimes they say no, like sometimes they do, but you gotta just put yourself out there. And sometimes it's not fun. Like I said, like talking to some players who don't like to talk to the media, but you have to talk to them. So like, that's kind of the balance of where I find myself. But long story short, to answer your question, yeah, before and after the game, and then during practices throughout the week is when I talk to the players.
Thank you.
Ellen, go.
So my question is, why did you choose sports writing specifically?
Just because I love sports and I thought like I could be a good sports writer. But I will say that like being like a true journalist, and what I say by true journalist is writing about news stuff, covering like politics, like that stuff is really, that's like a whole nother level in my opinion. I give all my like peers who work at the Denver Post with me props, who cover, the state capitol or cover breaking news, because that stuff's hard. Like going out to a crime scene and like having to talk to, families and police officers, going to the Capitol and having to cover, hearings and stuff, like bills and legislature, like that stuff's difficult. So I love sports. That's why I chose sports writing. I thought I could be a great sports writer. So that's why I did it. And because it was like, it seemed like a good, like second place prize if I couldn't like be an athlete myself, to be honest.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What's your favorite part about your job?
I would say like just covering sports, going to the games, watching games for a living. But then also this was asked earlier, but I didn't mention it. I would say like developing the relationships with some of the players. Like a lot of the players, they don't really want to know you or get to know you. They'll give you a quote or whatever, but they'll try and keep you at bay. But some players will actually get to know your name. You'll say hi to them. It's not like you'll become friends with them. You know, me and Charlie Blackman are not getting dinner anytime soon, but I can go up to Charlie and we can have a conversation about baseball. Sometimes I'm talking to him for a story. Sometimes I'm just talking to him to build a relationship. So that's one of my favorite parts, is building relationships with athletes and with like high school coaches, just like people around the community who then, you know, will text me or call me when they have a really good story because they know and trust me and that I've kind of built that relationship with them. So like the relationships part is really what's really fun too.
Do you travel to like other countries and states to interview?
Yeah, so I do travel, not to other countries. Well, the Broncos are going to London this year, but unfortunately I'm not going. But I do travel to other states to cover the team. So like with the Rockies, I've traveled, like when they go on the road, like if they go to San Francisco, I'll go to San Francisco, stay in a hotel, not stay in their hotel, their fancy hotel. I stay in like the rundown hotel down the street. And I don't think I like travel on the team jet or anything either. That's not that fancy, but it is fun to like follow the team around the country, especially if the team is doing well. The Rockies haven't been so good lately, neither of the Broncos. So that's been tough, but yeah, traveling is fun, but it's also like at the end of the trip, you're like, it's a lot of work, and it's not like you're getting to sightsee a lot. You know, you're spending a lot of time like in the locker room at the stadium.
My question is, how much of the time do you cover other sports that are not baseball or football?
I would say it's like 50% baseball, or 50% football, 30% baseball, and then 20% like other sports. And that's like one of the most fun times for me, is because there's not like a lot of pressure and deadlines and the game's over. You need to write a story, get your story in. It's like kind of go find a story, go out into the community and talk to people and like find really cool stories. Like one story that I did lately that I thought was really cool, which it was football, but it was women's football. It was about a women's tackle football team who won a national championship and like is doing some really cool things. So that was like, that's cool to like, because like guys, when I cover the Broncos and the Rockies, I'm out there with like 30 other media people. You know, there's like a lot of people out there and trying to talk to the same people you're trying to talk to. But when I go out and do these other stories and cover high school sports, I'm able to like go out into the community and just like talk with people one-on-one. And that the stories are better that way. They're just better because like you're the only one out there. And so that's kind of like some of my most favorite stuff. So yeah, about 20% of the time is what I cover, like other stuff, high school sports and alternative sports, and just like really anything that is a good sports story. That's what I'm looking for.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So my question is, what influenced you to do journalism, and was it like someone, or did you just think it would be the best option?
So I had in first grade, we had like writing hour, and I took it super seriously and like wrote like a whole book on, it's called Teams of the NFL. And I'm not only like insisted my teacher, you know, be my editor, I made my parents like laminate it and take it to Kinko's and like get it bound like an actual book. So like I kind of knew from a young age I wanted to be a writer. But like I told you, I don't know if you heard, but when I went to college, I wasn't really sure what type of writer I wanted to be. Like I enrolled in journalism school, but wanted to write like poetry and stories and stuff. So I kind of like, I knew I wanted to be a writer, and I just kind of followed that. And this is kind of where it led me. In terms of influences, I would say reading all throughout growing up. I mean, just like if you want to be a musician and how your favorite bands would influence you, like, you know, the favorite authors I read in Sports Illustrated, like that's what kind of made me want, and the Denver Post too, that's what made me want to be a sports writer.
So I have two questions. The first one is, what are your perks to having your job? Do you ever get front row seat or something?
Oh, that's actually a good question. That's a question I get a lot. And really the answer is no. There's no like free tickets there's no invitations over to Russell Wilson's house for his party, and also as a journalist, like ethically, you're not really supposed to like take presents or gifts or stuff from the people that you write about, because then it looks like, oh, well, if I'm going to Russell Wilson's parties at his house, like, am I going to be fair when he's not playing well? Like, am I able to write about him critically? Like, it's kind of like so it's like there's this whole like ethics thing in journalism where you're not supposed to accept like gifts or perks, which is kind of tough, especially like, if you're a political reporter, you cover the White House or you cover the president or the governor or whatever, like you can't take gifts from them because that would be like against journalism ethics. Now, that doesn't mean though, you can't like become really close to these people, because the closer you become to like the people you cover, whether it's athletes, teams, or politicians, like usually the better your stories are going to be. I would say the biggest perk to the job is like the free travel that your company pays for. Not that the team you cover pays for, but your company pays for, where you get to go see stadiums and cities that you wouldn't have seen had you not been traveling for work. So that's kind of like the biggest perk I see to it.
Okay, and my second question is, what happens when you're sick? Do you just watch it on TV? Do they extend it or something?
That's good. Yeah, good question. So if you're sick, you just basically other reporters at the newspaper will have to like cover for me, or I could watch it on TV or whatnot. But just like with teachers, like there's sick days, but you don't really use a lot of them, because like you're constantly, you got to work. You just got to go to work every day. But that's where like, just like teachers have substitutes at the Denver Post, if I'm sick and I can't cover the game, they'll ask another reporter, a sports reporter, to like sub in for me. You're welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
So my first question is, what's your favorite player on the Denver Broncos team?
My favorite player to cover, I mentioned, is Bradley Chubb, just because he's a really nice guy. But I think my favorite like player in terms of watching him play is Cortland Sutton, because I just think he's a really good player and he's a good leader in the locker room. And it's been cool to watch him because he had an ACL injury. I'm sure if you follow the team, he blew out his knee a couple of years ago, and he's come back and he's looking pretty good. So I'm excited to see what he can do with Russell Wilson this year.
And actually, I had one more question.
Sure, what's that?
Have you ever heard of the Little Rebels Football League?
Little Rebels? No, where's it at?
Oh, it's in Weld County.
Weld County? I have not heard of it. Should I check it out? It's some pretty good football.
Oh, well, you don't have to. We're pretty good.
Okay. Hey, well, I'll check it out. I always appreciate the tips, and I like looking into the youth program. So I'll check out the Little Rebels, and good luck with your season too, bud.
Okay, thank you.
And we just have one more question in connection to that. So this is a perfect segue. Thank you.
Yep.
Do you have any tips on becoming a writer?
Oh, that's a great question. So first thing is, to be a writer, you have to write. And I know that sounds like simple and maybe a little dumb, but you just have to write all the time. Don't be afraid to write badly. Don't be afraid to write poorly. Don't be afraid to write something and 5 minutes later look at it and be like, oh, this is terrible. I want to burn it. That's okay. That's part of becoming like a really good writer. So my first tip would be, get a journal or a notebook where every day, or at least a couple times a week, you're writing something in there. a poem, observation from school, a little story, like literally whatever your heart's content to write, that's what you write. And you're going to do lots of writing in school, and that'll help you, and they'll give you lots of prompts, but on your own, just write as much as you can, and write what you want to write what interests you, and write about what interests you. And if other people think it's silly or laugh or see your journal and kind of smirk, just forget about them, because like writing it's a fun thing to do, but it's also like a solitary and sometimes a lonely thing. Like sometimes you feel like, oh, I'm not getting any better, or no one's going to read my stuff or like it. Well, it doesn't matter. Just keep writing. And eventually like you're going to find like, oh, I'm getting pretty good at this. And there's no, like, you have no idea where that could take you. Like being a good writer, it's not just, you could be a journalist or you could write books. Like being a good writer is a huge skill you got to have no matter what you do. And no matter what you do, it's going to make you, like, it's going to set you apart, because it's going to make you better on tests. It's going to make you better talking to people. So that's my like biggest advice for you. If you want to be a writer, start writing, keep writing, and then also find somebody who will help support you, whether it's like your parents or whether it's a teacher. Like find someone who really kind of believes in you and will help you, like, who will like be critical of you, be like, hey, you could do this better, but also like, champion you and lift you up and tell you that you're doing good and tell you to keep going, because that's what you need if you're a writer. So that's my two biggest tips for you. You're welcome.
I have a question, Kyle.
Yeah, of course.
Could you talk a little bit about why communication is a really important skill to have in your line of work?
So yeah, I mean, like I talked about, a lot of my job is going into the locker room and talking with players. Now, the players it's just like going into a room where, most of the people don't know you, and you got to go up to a few of them and talk to them. Stick out your hand, introduce yourself, say why, hey, can you talk to me about this? So like communication is critical, number one, because if I can't interview and talk to players and coaches, I can't write. I can't be a writer. I can't be a reporter. So like part of that is just like, believing in yourself and not being scared to say the wrong thing or stumble or slip up or ask the wrong question. Because trust me, I've done all of those, and it's fine. The interview just keeps going. So that's number one. Number two is like communication's huge in that I have to make sure that I know before I walk into the locker room, I know what I'm going to write about. So I know who I'm going to talk to and what I'm going to ask them about. And then I need to communicate that with my bosses, my editors. So my bosses are not, breathing down my neck and being like, hey, where's the story? What's the story about? And just like any job you have, the happier your bosses are, the easier your job is going to be. So every day I have to communicate what I'm doing to my bosses. Then I have to go into the locker room and I have to talk to the players to get my stories. So I know sometimes, like, if you want, you may want to bury your head in a book or, lock yourself in your room and watch Netflix. But like, this is why, I'm this way with my own 13-year-old daughter. I'm like, yo, get out of your room, come out here, talk to me, talk to these people, talk to these guests that are over. I don't care if they're neighbors you don't know. Like, listen, not every conversation you have is going to be like with your buddies and like fun and games, but you do have to like learn how to just talk to people. You don't have to be like the president, smooth talker, but if you just learn how to kind of talk to people, let them talk, listen, like that's going to take you far, no matter what you do.
Thank you. Any final questions before we?
I have a quick question, Kyle. My name is Gina. My camera is off. I work with Amanda at Generation Schools. My question for you would be on networking, and for the students listening, making connections or forming relationships with people in your work. How is that important, or how has that helped you to make connections with others?
Yeah, great question, and nice to meet you. So guys, I'll tell you just a quick story. So in high school, I wasn't a very good student. I didn't do my homework as much as I should. I sometimes didn't go to class. Like I just wasn't a very good student. So I went off to college. My parents were basically like, if you don't get it in gear, you're going to be in trouble, you know, like, and I was going to be in trouble. So in college, I actually decided to be like the best student I could. So to Gina's question, fast forwarding here, in college, I tried the very best I could. I ended up graduating as the valedictorian of my class. And one of the things that helped me was not the fact that I graduated valedictorian, but the fact that in one of my classes, I sat in the very front row every single time and was involved and asked questions. And this professor who taught this class happened to own a media company. And long story short, he ended up after I went to New Mexico for a while and was working there, he ended up offering me a job to come work at his company, which was out in Indiana. So that was my first clue of like, okay, you know, being smart and trying hard is important, but it's also, guys, who you know, and like that's going to help get you a lot of jobs. And pretty much ever since then, it's not that you don't work hard for the job that you want, but you have to make sure all along the way, every person you meet, that you're treating them like they could get you your next job, because that very well could be the case, whether it's your boss, whether it's people you're working with, because you'll find as you get along in your field, there's going to be, whether you're a sports writer or you're in medicine or you're a teacher, like you're going to be working alongside the same people for a long time. And some of those people might end up becoming a principal somewhere else, who then they're going to make a hire for a job that you want. Like, so anytime, like it's important that you just, you know, just like you have your group of friends, you have like your group of work associates. And every time you meet somebody, make sure you remember their name and just kind of form a relationship with them, because you never know how that could help you down the line to help you like advance in your career and achieve the things you want to do.
Thank you. Of
course.
Anyone else?
Fort Morgan just wants to say something to Kyle.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome, guys. Thank you for listening and taking the time and talking with me. And whatever you guys choose to do, you know, just like go 100% at it. That's the biggest thing. That's like, have no fear of failure. You will fail. You'll slip up. It'll suck. It'll hurt. But like, you'll be better for it. And whatever you want to do, you can achieve by going full speed at it. So thank you. I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to me ramble on about sports writing, and hopefully read some of my stories. I'll try and get some coverage of the football team, of Weld County athletes, okay? Trey McBride, etc. So I appreciate it, guys.
That's awesome. Thank you, Kyle, so much. We really appreciate it, learning more about you and your career. Kiddos, you were a great audience, so kudos to you all.